Bobby and Lacey had been together for 2 years, married, and always up for an adventure. From the start, they placed a high value on intimacy. During their relatively short time together, they explored different ways to keep things exciting, like using blindfolds and toys in the bedroom. One weekend, Bobby went all out for Lacey. He playfully pampered her the entire day, served her meals, and made sure she felt truly loved and fulfilled. Lacey blossomed with each new experience. They even began experimenting in public from time to time. But behind all that, they were a perfectly normal couple in their 30s, both very successful in their careers. Lacey worked as a mid-level manager at a marketing company, while Bobby was a respected lawyer, just one step below the public prosecutor of their city. They had a wide social circle and often attended events with other couples and business partners. Since they had both decided against having children, they had plenty of free time to focus on their relationship, taking weekend trips and going on spontaneous adventures. To everyone around them, their partnership seemed perfect. It all began to change on a clear spring evening in May. That evening marked the 20th anniversary of Lacey's high school graduation. She had been looking forward to the reunion. It was the perfect opportunity to introduce her husband to her old friends and classmates. Bobby wore a sleek blazer without a tie, while Lacey shone in an elegant black dress. She always took care of her fitness, and Bobby often caught the attention of women wherever they went. But that never bothered Lacey. "Hurry up, darling. We're late," she called from downstairs. Bobby took one last look in the mirror, grabbed the car keys, and kissed his wife before they left the house. They got into the car and drove to the venue. It was located inside their residential complex, just a short drive away. Their new house nearby was still under construction. When they arrived, they mingled with the crowd, exchanging polite greetings and smiles typical of such events. Back in school, Lacey had been the captain of the cheerleading team and the student council president. She had always been well-liked and respected. Bobby followed her as she chatted with people she hadn't seen in years. She shared stories from their life together and told everyone how she and Bobby met, and how it was love at first sight. Later in the evening, Bobby and Lacey found a quiet moment together. "How about another drink?" Bobby asked. Lacey had already enjoyed 3 glasses of wine and was fully enjoying the evening. "Why not?" she replied. "Just don't take too long." Bobby walked over to the bar, while Lacey waited on the other side of the makeshift dance floor. The bar was busy, it was getting late, and people were lining up. He patiently stood in the queue, glancing around the room. The turnout was impressive. He was surprised by how many people had shown up. His gaze shifted back to Lacey. Someone was standing with her, a man in a suit and tie, probably around their age. Lacey was beaming. Bobby watched with interest. When the man finally turned around, Bobby's face lit up with a big grin. He recognized him. After getting their drinks, Bobby walked over to Lacey and the man. "Tom, what a surprise. I had no idea you knew my wife, let alone graduated with her," Bobby said. Tom was also a lawyer but worked for a different firm. He and Bobby had exchanged professional courtesies over the years, but they had never really formed a personal connection. "Hey, Bobby," Tom replied. "Yeah, I graduated with the prom queen herself." Lacey blushed at the compliment. "You two actually know each other?" Bobby teased. "Or was she just one of those girls who passed you in the hallway without even noticing?" "Actually, Bobby," Tom said with a smile, "Lacey and I were together in high school, and even into our first year of college. Tom and I had a scholarship at the same university," he said. "I played baseball, and by coincidence, Lacey ended up there too." Bobby's expression shifted. Now he was intrigued. "Really? That's interesting. I thought I already knew the full list of her former flames," he said, half joking. Lacey smiled, but it faded into something a little uneasy as she tucked her hair behind her ear. "Back then, we were young," she said quietly. "We thought we understood what relationships were." "Right," Tom replied with a hesitant smile, some of his earlier cheerfulness gone. "Well, life teaches us as we grow older," Bobby added with a laugh, trying to cut through the growing tension. Tom mumbled something under his breath, barely audible. He glanced over at Lacey, who now seemed visibly uncomfortable and was looking at the floor. Bobby noticed and skillfully steered the conversation toward work. He and Tom exchanged a few words about their legal careers while Lacey stood silently beside them, withdrawn, as if she was just watching from the outside. A sense of discomfort settled over her. She began giving Bobby subtle signals that she wanted to leave. She needed to get away. Soon after, they said their goodbyes to Tom and made their way toward the exit. Back home, lying in their warm bed, the topic of Tom came up again. It seems like someone forgot to mention an old boyfriend named Tom, Bobby said with a mischievous grin. Lacey replied playfully, "Well, every woman has one or two secrets, don't you think?" She smirked as she took off her jewelry and got ready for bed. "I had no idea you two even knew each other," she added. "It was so long ago, I honestly forgot." "Oh, I see him around the courthouse from time to time. He's a lawyer too," Bobby said casually. Then he joked, "Your secrets might just shape our destiny, you know." Lacey gave him a flirtatious look as he undressed, watching him closely. "Oh, really? And what if one of those secrets involves a sexual fantasy?" she purred, slipping under the blanket. Bobby raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Just before their lips met, Lacey pulled back slightly, sat up, bare-chested and breathtaking. A hint of shyness crossed her face as she murmured, "There is something." "Really?" Bobby asked, his heartbeat quickening. "A sexual fantasy?" he clarified. "Come on, tell me. You know how I get in those intimate moments. We lose ourselves." "Yes," Lacey replied sincerely. "One of the things I love most about you is how adventurous and open you are when it comes to intimacy." But then she hesitated, the discomfort playing on her face. Bobby sat down beside her, noticing her sudden unease. "Hey, I'm your husband. You can tell me anything. What's going on?" Lacey paused, trying to find the right words. "Finally," she said, "we've tried blindfolds, toys, we've experimented, but—" She stopped again. "Just say it." Bobby encouraged her gently. "It's hard to explain," she admitted, clearly nervous. "I'm not sure how you'll react." "Darling," he said, voice soft and calm. "You know you can talk to me. What's bothering you?" After a moment, she finally replied, quiet and hesitant. "Well, I've had this fantasy for a long time. It's not something traditional. It's more intense. A situation where I don't really know what's going to happen. I want to feel completely overwhelmed, not hurt, but devoured, emotionally, physically, like I'm not in control." Bobby frowned slightly, listening closely, trying to understand. "You mean something more spontaneous? More dominant?" Lacey nodded. "Exactly. I want you to take full control. Surprise me. Make it feel unplanned, raw, pure passion. And the truth is," she paused, her voice barely audible now, "I'm not even sure if you're the one who could do that." She looked away, clearly conflicted. "I want to give you all of me, even the parts that feel off limits, maybe even a little scary." Bobby took her hand, his voice calm but reassuring. "You're my wife," he said. "I value every part of you, even the ones you're afraid to share." Lacey nodded. "Yes, I want my husband to completely blow me away." "It sounds crazy, doesn't it?" Bobby's thoughts swirled. The idea of doing something so intense with his own wife had never crossed his mind before. But when he looked at her and saw the physical response her own words had triggered, he felt something too, a strange tension rising within him. "I'm not sure, Lacey," he said slowly. "I don't even know how I would begin to try something like that." Lacey looked at him seriously, as if a heavy burden had just been lifted from her chest. "I understand it's not easy," Lacey murmured softly. "That's why it's just a daydream." She turned onto her side, her back now facing Bobby. But Bobby reached over, gently pulled her back into his arms and whispered, "Wait a second. Is that really what you want?" Lacey rested her head on his chest and gave a small nod. When she looked up again, their eyes met, and they shared a tender kiss. "Then I'll do my best to make it come true," Bobby said. "Because I love you." Lacey lit up with a bright smile and kissed him again. They made love that night and finally fell into a peaceful sleep, still wrapped in the warmth of what they had shared. 2 weeks passed. Lacey was overwhelmed at work after her company landed a major new client. At the same time, Bobby was buried in a high-profile case with the prosecutor's office. Despite their full schedules, their daily routines remained mostly the same. dinners, social events, time together. But their intimacy had clearly taken a back seat to exhaustion. In the midst of it all, Lacey began noticing something Bobby jokingly referred to as baby fever. She had once mentioned wanting children after their third year of marriage, and that anniversary was now quickly approaching. Suddenly, she was tracking her cycle with precise detail and told Bobby exactly when she'd be ovulating. Bobby was impressed by her determination and organization. For weeks passed since their talk about her fantasy. In the last week, Lacey noticed a subtle change in Bobby. Nothing dramatic, but something had shifted. He seemed more distant, less interested in physical intimacy. She assumed it was a common reaction from men when their partners brought up the topic of having children. It had now been 2 months since their deep, vulnerable talk about her fantasy, and with their daily lives so packed and stressful, they barely had time for meaningful conversations anymore. Bobby was often irritable and blamed it on the pressure at the office and the ongoing legal case. As a loving wife, Lacey tried to ease his stress with a glass of whiskey here, a back massage there. But Bobby remained emotionally distant. 10 weeks had passed since that unforgettable night, and Lacey came to a conclusion. It was time to talk. Then Bobby beat her to it. "We need to talk," he said, for words no husband wants to hear, and yet there they were. They sat down in the dining area of their apartment. "What's going on?" Lacey asked gently. "Ever since the night of the class reunion, you've been pulling away. Is it because of what I said? About wanting a baby? Or about the other thing? Talk to me," she urged. "Whatever it is, you can be honest." Bobby sighed, his tone filled with regret. "No, sweetheart. I'm not upset with you. And yes, I want to have a family with you. I've thought about that since the day we got married. It's just the stress lately, this case, it's intense. It's in the public eye, and the pressure is nonstop. And about the fantasy, I've been thinking about that too. I actually have some ideas." Lacey relaxed a bit and smiled. "So, you're really ready to have a baby with me?" she asked. "Yes," Bobby replied. "But let's do it right. When's your next ovulation?" "In about 3 weeks," she answered. "Then no sex until then. Deal?" he asked. "Well, we haven't exactly been doing much of that lately anyway," she joked. "So sure. Deal." "That night, 3 weeks from now," he said with a smile. "I promise, I'll help you make a baby." "Perfect," Lacey whispered, her heart fluttering with joy. They kissed and went to bed, holding each other close. 3 weeks later, the moment had finally arrived. Lacey was still at the office, trying to wrap up some final tasks. It was around 4:30 p.m. when her boss, Allison, suddenly stepped into her office. "We've got a situation," she announced. "There's a project that absolutely has to be finished by dawn, and it's squarely in your department." Lacey's heart sank. She had ordered champagne for tonight, chosen the perfect flowers for the dining table. This night was supposed to be special, and now everything was falling apart. "My husband is going to be furious," she thought, pulling out her phone and thinking carefully about how to break the news. "Hi, honey," she said as Bobby picked up. "Hey, sweetheart," he replied. "Are you ready for tonight?" Lacey took a deep breath. "I hate to say this, but I have to stay late. My supervisor just gave me a last-minute project, and my team and I have to get it done tonight. Can we move our plans to tomorrow?" she asked cautiously. "Absolutely not," Bobby replied, but his voice was gentle. "We'll adjust. Let's make it a midnight dinner instead." "Okay," Lacey said, trying to hide her disappointment. "I'll do my best to finish quickly and get home as soon as I can." "I can't wait," Bobby said warmly. "I love you." "Love you too," Lacey said before hanging up. It was around 11:30 p.m. when she finally pulled into the parking lot near their apartment. Completely exhausted, she climbed out of the car and headed up the stairs. As she rubbed her neck to ease the tension, she began to notice something strange. The complex, which was normally well lit, was almost completely dark. The parking lot, usually filled with limousines and minivans, was nearly empty tonight. She didn't think much of it and continued toward her front door. The blinds were open, but the apartment was completely dark. That was odd. Bobby should have been home hours ago. Just as she slid her key into the lock, something happened. Something she could never have prepared for. Before she could even unlock the door, Two strong hands grabbed her shoulders and shoved her forward. She hit the wall hard, gasping. Before she could scream, something was yanked over her head and tied tightly around her mouth, silencing her. The attacker spun her around roughly. She tried to scream again, but the gag muffled every sound. The figure was dressed completely in black. He wore a black ski mask. He struck her twice in the face, then spun her around again, pulling her hands behind her back. Lacey resisted with all her strength, but it was no use. Another hard blow left her dazed, barely conscious. Then the masked man carried her into the bedroom. At the foot of the bed, she saw two straps already attached to the frame. Her heart pounded with fear. The man strapped her ankles down and spread her legs. She lay there, gagged, her hands bound behind her, completely helpless. Tears streamed down her face as she turned her head away, trying to escape the horror of what was happening. The figure loomed over her, breathing heavily. He grabbed her blouse and violently ripped it open. Lacey whimpered under the gag. Mascara smeared down her cheeks. Every moment stretched into an eternity. Then, suddenly, he stopped. He sat upright, motionless, as if frozen in uncertainty. Something had shifted. His breathing slowed. A long, heavy silence filled the room. The masked figure reached for something beside the bed and pulled out a knife. Lacey froze in pure terror. She had no idea what was coming next. The cold metal brushed against the inside of her thigh, not cutting, but enough to send chills through her overstimulated body. He didn't force off her underwear. Instead, he moved with slow, calculated precision. She whimpered again, confused, afraid, but the man remained completely silent. Every movement was deliberate, like he was performing a ritual. The blade never left her skin, threatening, but restrained. Then he bent over her, breathed against her neck, and held her in silence. Lacey shut her eyes tightly, her mind racing. And then, a jolt of clarity struck her like lightning. This was the fantasy she had confessed to her husband 3 months ago, the one they had only discussed once. Slowly, her fear began to fade. It was replaced by something else, an understanding. Her body began to relax under the firm grip. She looked into the masked man's eyes, and in the stillness, something clicked. It was Bobby. A tear rolled down her cheek, not from fear, but from relief. Her fear dissolved into surrender. Then, suddenly, another figure stepped out from the shadows. A second man. Lacey's heart dropped. That wasn't part of the plan. Who is that? She thought. The new figure spoke. Did she enjoy it? She knew that voice. The moonlight revealed his face. Lacey froze. It was Bobby. He wasn't the man in the mask. Lacey's expression changed instantly. If that's my husband, then who? She turned back to the masked man, her mind racing. But he continued undeterred, focused and silent. Bobby walked slowly around the room, his presence now creating a strange, electric atmosphere. Something heavy, intimate, and unfamiliar. Lacey's moans deepened, her emotions teetering between surrender and shock. Then, without a word, Bobby stepped forward. He reached out and tore the ski mask off the man's head. Silence filled the room. Lacey's heart stopped. A storm of emotions swept across her face. Shock, disbelief, fear, rage, and something else she couldn't quite define. Because now she saw the truth. The man in the mask was Tom. Bobby paced the room, then turned to his wife, his voice firm, almost distant. While Tom continued his silent role in the background, Bobby began to speak, his voice calm, but filled with intensity. He told Lacey everything that had happened over the past 3 months. He revealed how, after the class reunion, he and Tom met again, this time for lunch. And that's when Tom dropped a bombshell that shattered Bobby's world. Lacey had been unfaithful. Not recently. For at least 4 months before the reunion. Bobby went on, explaining how Tom laid everything out in detail. Hotel rooms, secret meetings, names, dates. Everything. His eyes scanned both of them, piercing, but void of emotion. Then came the final, devastating blow. Tom had never loved Lacey. To him, she was just another cheating wife. A story he'd seen before. Nothing more. And now, that's exactly how Bobby saw her too. His voice sharpened. His tone rose. He shouted at Lacey, still tied up, still helpless, her sobs returning, louder, more desperate. In the corner, Tom stood silently, watching. Then Bobby's voice dropped to a chilling calm. "Now, sweetheart," he said coldly, "as I told you, I will help you get pregnant." There was no warmth in his voice, no love, only icy control. He turned and walked to the bedroom door. And then he opened it. Lacey's eyes widened in horror. Several men stepped into the room. She recognized them immediately, workers from the construction crew building their new home. They didn't speak. They didn't smile. They looked prepared, as if this moment had been planned down to the last second. Lacey choked back a scream, the panic crushing her. This night wasn't over. Suddenly, she felt a shift. Tom's breathing grew heavier, uneven. His body tensed. He was getting close. But even then, there was no comfort, no connection, only a cold, mechanical presence. And then, he stopped. He pulled away silently. He looked to Bobby. "I take no responsibility for what happens next," he said softly, almost proudly. Then he added, "Let your crew handle it." Lacey froze. Crew? More men entered. Familiar faces. All from the same construction site. None of them said a word. They just stood there, waiting. Lacey turned to Bobby, eyes full of pleading terror. But he didn't move. He just watched. This wasn't passion. This wasn't justice. This was punishment. A message. A performance. She was no longer in control. And the night had only just begun. Later, after the men were gone, after the silence returned, Bobby leaned over her. He whispered quietly, "Think very carefully before you betray the one who truly loved you." Then Bobby and Tom removed her gag. They untied her hands. And without another word, they left the room, laughing. Curled up in the corner of the bed, Lacey was alone. "Let's go," Tom said.